You're nothing but hired help. Clean up your mess and know your place." The words cut through the elegant dining room like a blade. Reginald Ashworth III deliberately swept his hand across the table, sending crystal water glasses crashing to the marble floor. The sound echoed through the Meridian Club's most exclusive private dining room. Zara Thompson, 28, dropped to her knees without a word. Her black uniform absorbed the spreading puddle as 40 of the city's most powerful people watched in uncomfortable silence. Ashworth snapped his fingers twice, pointing at the mess with theatrical disgust. "Faster. I don't have all night for this. Incompetence." The real estate mogul's voice carried the casual cruelty of someone who'd never questioned his right to humiliate others. Around the room, phones began emerging from designer handbags and suit pockets. Have you ever been publicly humiliated by someone who thought they owned you? What Zara did next would rewrite the rules of power forever. 8:47 p.m. The Meridian Club's chandeliers cast warm light over faces that had grown cold. Zara remained on her knees, methodically collecting glass shards while Ashworth adjusted his platinum cufflinks with theatrical patience. "I specifically requested experienced staff tonight," he announced to the table, his voice carrying across the room. "Not some urban experiment the club's trying out." Zara's hands never paused in their work. "Sir, I've been serving here for 2 years. My record speaks for—" "Don't talk back." Ashworth's interruption was sharp, dismissive. "Your kind should be grateful for any work in a place like this." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the kitchen staff visible through the service window had stopped their prep work to watch. These weren't just words anymore. They were weapons, broadcast live to an audience that was growing by the minute. Victoria Lang, a lifestyle influencer with 463,000 followers, had started streaming when the glasses hit the floor. Her phone's screen showed viewer numbers climbing 1,200, 2,800, 4,500. The chat exploded with reactions. "This is so wrong! Someone needs to help her! In 2025? Really?" But for every supportive comment, another cruel one appeared. "She probably deserved it. Know your place." The digital mob was forming, taking sides in real time. Ashworth seemed to feed off the attention. He waved his hand dismissively each time Zara approached with a fresh napkin or replacement glass. When she reached across the table to refill water goblets, he examined his crystal stemware with exaggerated disgust, as if her touch had contaminated it. "Zena," he called, deliberately mispronouncing her name. "Zena, bring me a clean glass. This one has marks on it." "It's Zara, sir." Her voice remained steady, professional. "Whatever." He didn't look at her when he spoke, addressing his comments to the other guests instead. "The declining standards here are really quite remarkable. Harrison must be desperate to maintain his membership numbers." 8:52 p.m. The club manager, Thomas Henley, materialized at Zara's shoulder. His face was flushed, his usual composure cracked. These were his most important members, his biggest donors, the ones who kept the Meridian Club's aging elegance alive through their astronomical membership fees. "Is there a problem here?" Henley's question was directed at Ashworth, not Zara. "Your staff member seems to have some attitude issues," Ashworth replied, cutting into his Wagyu beef with deliberate precision. "Perhaps a reminder about customer service standards would be appropriate." Henley's eyes found Zara, still kneeling beside the table, still cleaning. The message was clear without words. "You have 10 minutes to finish service and clear out," he whispered to her. "Mr. Ashworth's concerns need to be addressed." Victoria's live stream captured every word. The viewer count had climbed past 8,000. #Meridian Club scandal was beginning to trend on 3 platforms simultaneously. Comments poured in faster than anyone could read them. But something else was happening, something the cameras couldn't quite capture. As Zara stood to leave the table, a small item slipped from her apron pocket, a boarding pass, first class, Geneva, tomorrow morning. The gold lettering caught the light for just a moment before she quickly retrieved it. She pulled out a Mont Blanc pen to initial the evening's receipt, not the cheap ballpoint the club provided for staff, but a genuine platinum and ebony writing instrument that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her movements were careful, deliberate, as if she were signing something far more important than a dinner check. Then came the phone call. Zara stepped aside, just out of earshot, and spoke in rapid, fluent Mandarin. The guests couldn't understand the words, but her tone was authoritative, commanding. She wasn't asking for permission. She was giving instructions. When she returned to the table, her posture hadn't changed. Still professional. Still composed. But there was something in her eyes now. Not defeat, not submission. Calculation. 9:01 p.m. 2 security guards appeared at the dining room entrance. Henley had made the call while Zara was on her phone. The message was clear. This situation was escalating beyond words. "Ma'am," the first guard said, approaching Zara's station. "We're going to need you to come with us." The room fell completely silent. Even Victoria's live stream comments seemed to pause, as if the entire internet was holding its breath. The other guests, who had been studiously avoiding eye contact throughout the confrontation, now stared openly, some with shame, others with curiosity, a few with outright satisfaction. Ashworth leaned back in his chair, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Finally, some appropriate action. But Zara didn't move toward the guards. Instead, she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out something unexpected. Not her resignation, not an apology, but a slim leather portfolio. The kind executives carried to board meetings. The kind that suggested its owner had business more important than serving overpriced wine to entitled billionaires. The countdown clock in everyone's mind, 10 minutes to finish service, had become something else entirely. Time itself seemed to slow as every person in that room, every viewer on Victoria's stream, every commenter in the digital mob waited to see what would happen next. Because sometimes, in these precious real-life stories that become touching stories shared across the internet, the person everyone assumes is powerless turns out to hold all the cards. And sometimes, just sometimes, those black stories of humiliation transform into something much more powerful. The revolution was about to begin with the quiet rustle of important papers being removed from an expensive leather case. 9:02 p.m. The leather portfolio sat in Zara's hands like a loaded weapon. Around the room, conversations died mid-sentence as every eye fixed on the slim black case. Victoria's phone captured it all, the security guards frozen mid-approach, Ashworth's confident smirk beginning to waver, the collective intake of breath from 40 of the city's most powerful people. "What's in the folder?" someone whispered from table 12. The question rippled through the room, but Zara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked directly at Victoria's live stream camera. The viewer count had exploded past 15,000. Comments flew by in a blur of confusion and anticipation. "OMG, what is she doing?" "This is getting real. Portfolio equals receipts incoming." Manager Henley stepped forward, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Ma'am, whatever that is, this really isn't the time or place for—" "Actually, Thomas," Zara's voice cut through his stammering with quiet authority, "this is exactly the time and place." She knew his name. Not just sir or manager, his actual first name. The realization hit Henley like ice water. How did a part-time waitress know his name? Ashworth slammed his wine glass down hard enough to crack the stem. "I don't know what kind of dramatic scene you're planning, but security needs to remove this person immediately. She's clearly unstable." The words hung in the air, but something had shifted. The other guests were no longer nodding along with Ashworth's pronouncements. They were studying Zara with new interest, noticing details they'd missed before. The quality of her shoes, Louboutin, not Payless. The watch barely visible beneath her sleeve, Patek Philippe, worth more than most cars. 9:04 p.m. Victoria's live stream exploded with new viewers as people began sharing the link across platforms. Local news stations were already sliding into her DMs, offering to buy exclusive footage rights. The viewer count hit 22,000. "Guys, I think something huge is about to happen," Victoria whispered to her camera. "Like change the world huge." The security guards looked uncertain now, glancing between Henley, Ashworth, and the mysterious woman who seemed increasingly comfortable being the center of attention. One of them spoke into his radio, requesting backup, or maybe guidance. Kitchen staff had abandoned all pretense of working. Servers, busboys, and chefs crowded the service window, phones out, recording from every angle. The Meridian Club's rigid hierarchy was crumbling in real time as everyone sensed they were witnessing something historic. Dr. Sarah Martinez, seated at table 4, leaned forward with academic curiosity. "I'm sorry, but who exactly are you?" It was the question everyone wanted to ask but hadn't dared. In the exclusive world of the Meridian Club, people were introduced properly with credentials and family names that carried weight. You didn't just appear. Zara smiled, not the practiced, subservient smile of a service worker, but something warmer and infinitely more dangerous. "That's an excellent question, Dr. Martinez. I was wondering when someone would think to ask." She knew Martinez's name, too, and her title, without being introduced. Ashworth's face was reddening now, his earlier confidence curdling into something uglier. "Stop this ridiculous theater. Security, I'm ordering you to remove her now." "Actually," Zara said, opening the portfolio with deliberate care, "you're not in a position to order anyone to do anything, Reginald." First name. No Mr. Ashworth, no deferential honorifics. Just his name, spoken with the casual familiarity of an equal, or someone who considered herself superior. 9:06 p.m. The first document emerged from the portfolio. Even from across the room, people could see it was official. Letterhead, seals, the kind of heavy paper that government agencies and major corporations used for important business. "What is that?" Henley's voice cracked slightly. Victoria's camera zoomed in, but the text was too small to read clearly. Her comments section was going wild with speculation. Legal documents? She's suing them? Lawyer up, queen. But Zara wasn't ready to reveal everything yet. She held the document just out of clear view, building tension with the skill of someone who understood exactly how power worked, not through volume or violence, but through information and timing. "Before we continue," she said, addressing the room but keeping her eyes on Ashworth, "I want everyone here to remember exactly what was said tonight. Every word, every gesture. Because in about 30 seconds, this conversation is going to become very expensive for some people." The threat was clear without being explicit. Witnesses were being established. Evidence was being documented. Whatever was about to happen, it would be legally airtight. Harrison Webb, the club's owner, burst through the dining room doors looking like he'd run from his office. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his breathing labored. Someone had called him, but who? And why did he look terrified? "What's going on here?" Webb demanded, but his eyes were on Zara, not Ashworth or the security guards. "Harrison," Zara said warmly, as if greeting an old friend. "Perfect timing. We were just getting to the interesting part." Webb stopped dead. The color drained from his face. He knew that voice. He knew that name. And suddenly, every piece of the puzzle clicked into place for him, even if no one else understood yet. 9:08 p.m. The live stream count hit 31,000. Hashtag Meridian Club reveal was trending nationally. News outlets were now posting updates in real time, trying to figure out what was happening in this exclusive downtown club. Other guests began pulling out their phones, not to record, but to research. Fingers flew across screens, searching for Zara Thompson, cross-referencing her face against Google Images and LinkedIn profiles. Dr. Martinez was the first to gasp audibly. Her phone clattered to the table as she stared at her screen, then at Zara, then back at her screen.
"Oh my God,"
she whispered. The words carried across the silent room like a gunshot. Other phones began chiming with incoming messages, notifications, alerts. People were finding something big. Ashworth sensed the shift before he understood it. The room's energy had changed completely. Where moments ago he'd been the dominant force, controlling the narrative and humiliating an inferior, now he was beginning to look like prey.
"What?" he snapped at Martinez. "What are you all looking at?"
But Martinez couldn't speak. She just held up her phone, showing a Forbes magazine cover story. The headline was visible even from across the room. "The Invisible Billionaire: How Zara Thompson Built a Fortune While Nobody Was Watching." The photograph on the cover showed a woman in an elegant business suit, standing in front of a Manhattan skyline. The same woman who was currently wearing a server's uniform and holding a portfolio that was about to change everything. Victoria's live stream comments exploded. "No way! Is this real? Billionaire Waitress?" I'm screaming. 9:10 p.m. The 10-minute countdown was over, but nobody was leaving. The revolution had begun, and everyone in that room, from the kitchen staff to the security guards to the most powerful people in the city, understood they were witnessing one of those life stories that would be retold for decades. The portfolio opened fully. The first document was visible now, clear enough for cameras to capture, and at the top, in bold legal letterhead, were words that made Ashworth's blood run cold. Thompson Vest Capital Management, Asset Holdings and Loan Documentation. 9:11 p.m. The name Thompson Vest Capital Management hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Security guards lowered their radios. Kitchen staff pressed closer to the service window. Even Victoria's live stream comments paused for a heartbeat before erupting into chaos. Zara Thompson, not the waitress, but the CEO whose name appeared on the document, stood in the center of the dining room with the quiet confidence of someone who had just shifted the entire power structure of the room. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about who exactly employs whom here," she said, her voice carrying new authority that made everyone listen. Ashworth's fork clattered to his plate. That's impossible. You're a waitress. I saw you cleaning my mess." "I was never hiding who I am, Reginald." Zara's use of his first name now felt different, not presumptuous, but appropriate, equal to equal. "You simply chose to see only what your prejudices allowed." She pulled the first document fully from the portfolio. The letterhead was unmistakable. Thompson Vest Capital Management, with an address on Park Avenue that every person in that room recognized. Below it, in crisp corporate formatting, was a title that made several guests audibly gasp. Zara Thompson, Chief Executive Officer and Founding Partner. Webb stepped forward, his face ashen. "Zara, I had no idea you were working here. If I'd known..." "You did know, Harrison." Her smile was gentle but pointed. "I told you when I purchased the building's mortgage that I might stop by to evaluate our investment firsthand. You assumed I meant during business hours, in a suit, announced by assistants." The words hit the room like individual hammers. She owned the mortgage, the building they were sitting in, the exclusive Meridian Club that these people paid hundreds of thousands to join was, at least partially, hers. "Doctor." Martinez held up her phone with trembling hands. "Forbes lists your net worth at $1.2 billion. "That was last quarter's estimate," Zara replied matter-of-factly. "Recent acquisitions have improved our position significantly." Victoria's live stream had exploded past 47,000 viewers. Comments flew by so fast they were just colored blurs. "Billionaire expose!" "She's been serving him while owning half the city? This is the best revenge plot ever." "Queen behavior." Local news vans were already pulling up outside the club. Someone had tipped off Channel 7 about the viral stream. Producers were frantically trying to get camera crews inside while lawyers debated broadcast rights for footage that might reshape how people thought about service work forever. Ashworth stood abruptly, his chair scraping against marble. This is some kind of elaborate hoax. Nobody worth that much money works as a waitress. Why not? Zara's question was genuine, curious. I built my fortune by understanding businesses from the ground up. Literally. I've worked every position from dishwasher to boardroom. How else would I know which investments are actually worth making? She pulled out a second document, this one with Ashworth Properties letterhead. Even upside down across the table, Ashworth could see his own signature at the bottom. Speaking of investments, Zara continued, your company currently owes Thompson Vest approximately $127 million across 3 different development projects. The master loan agreement you signed includes some interesting clauses about conduct and reputation management. The blood drained from Ashworth's face. He knew exactly which loan she was referencing. The one that had saved his company from bankruptcy 2 years ago. The one with terms he'd thought were generous at the time. Section 12.4, Zara read aloud, covers material reputation damage to lender through borrower conduct. Tonight's performance, broadcast to... She glanced at Victoria's phone. 48,000 viewers and counting. Definitely qualifies. Henley was frantically typing on his phone, probably trying to reach the club's legal department. But it was Saturday night, and lawyers don't typically work weekends for employment disputes that have suddenly become billion-dollar corporate negotiations. 9:14 p.m. The room was completely silent except for the soft ding of notifications as more people shared Victoria's stream. Zara Thompson reveal was trending globally now. International business networks were picking up the story. The phrase stealth wealth was being searched millions of times per minute. There's more you should know, Zara said, pulling out a third document. But first, let's address your immediate concerns about ownership. This document was different. Heavier paper, official seals. The kind of legal formatting that suggested government involvement at the highest levels. What is that? Webb's voice was barely a whisper. Meridian Club currently carries $8.3 million in various debts, Zara explained, as casually as discussing the weather. City taxes, vendor payments, staff benefits that are apparently overdue. Thompson Vest, through our hospitality subsidiary, currently holds 34% of your commercial mortgage. She let that sink in before continuing. We also hold the primary liens on your wine collection, art pieces, and the mineral rights beneath this building. The implications crashed over the room like a wave. She didn't just own part of the club, she held enough debt to potentially control it entirely. Dr. Martinez was furiously taking notes on her phone. As a professor of business ethics at Columbia, she understood she was watching a masterclass in leveraged negotiation. Her students would be studying this case for decades. How? Ashworth's voice cracked. When did you acquire controlling interest in your lives? Zara finished. Gradually, methodically, the same way you've been acquiring power over people you consider beneath you. The difference is I bought actual assets instead of just buying into my own superiority. Victoria's camera captured every word, every facial expression. The contrast was devastating. Ashworth, red-faced and sputtering, versus Zara, calm and articulate, still wearing her server's uniform but commanding the room like she owned it. Which, it was becoming clear, she essentially did. 9:16 p.m. Security guards were now looking to Zara for instructions rather than Henley or Webb. The power structure had flipped so completely that even the club's enforcement arm understood who actually held authority. This is extortion, Ashworth said desperately. You can't leverage personal behavior against business relationships. I'm not leveraging anything, Zara replied. I'm simply explaining the consequences of actions you've already taken. The loan documents are public record. Your behavior tonight is broadcast internationally. The connections between them are mathematical, not personal. She turned to address the room, including Victoria's live stream audience. Everyone here tonight witnessed what happened. You saw someone use their perceived power to humiliate someone they considered powerless. You watched 40 intelligent people sit silently while discrimination played out in front of them. The accusation hung heavy. Every guest looked uncomfortable now, remembering their own silence, their own complicity in what they'd assumed was just an entitled rich man being rude to staff. But here's what makes this one of those touching stories that changes everything, Zara continued, her voice gaining strength. Power isn't actually about money or position or who serves whom. Power is about information, preparation, and understanding systems well enough to change them. She pulled out her final document, a termination notice for the club's management company dated for Monday morning. Harrison, I'm sorry, but your management contract is being terminated effective immediately. The new management team will implement some significant policy changes. Webb nodded numbly. He understood. This wasn't punishment. It was evolution. The club would survive, probably thrive, but it would operate by different rules now. 9:18 p.m. Victoria's stream hit 67,000 viewers. News outlets were already writing headlines. Billionaire CEO exposed while working as waitress. The ultimate undercover boss story. When the server owns the restaurant. Ashworth tried one last desperate play. You planned this. This whole thing was a setup. No, Zara said firmly. I've been working here for 2 years and nothing like this has happened before. I didn't plan your behavior tonight, Reginald. I simply prepared for it. The distinction was crucial. She hadn't engineered a confrontation. She'd positioned herself to respond effectively when confrontation inevitably came. Every slight, every dismissal, every assumption about my worth based on my job title, she continued, I turned into research. I studied power structures from the inside. I learned how people behave when they think no one important is watching. The live stream comments were slowing now as people absorbed the magnitude of what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a viral video. It was a case study in systemic change, broadcast live to the world. And what I learned, Zara concluded, folding the documents back into her portfolio, is that the most powerful people are often the ones nobody notices, the ones serving others, listening carefully, understanding how everything really works. She looked directly at Victoria's camera, speaking to the millions who would eventually see this footage. These black stories, these life stories of discrimination and dismissal, they don't have to end with powerlessness. Sometimes they end with revolution. The room held its breath, waiting to see what kind of revolution this would be. 9:19 p.m. The leather portfolio lay open on the table like a war chest, documents fanned out with surgical precision. Each paper represented millions of dollars, thousands of jobs, and the kind of leverage that could reshape entire industries. Zara stood at the center of it all, no longer a waitress, but a CEO conducting the most public board meeting in corporate history. Let's discuss your options, Reginald, she said, her voice carrying the weight of boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions. Because unlike the power games you're used to playing, this one has actual rules. Ashworth's hands shook as he reached for his wine glass. The man who had casually humiliated someone minutes earlier now looked like he might collapse. What do you want? I want exactly what any responsible lender wants when a borrower violates their agreement, Zara replied. Compliance with contract terms, mitigation of reputational damage, and assurance of future performance. Victoria's live stream had stabilized at 73,000 viewers, but the audience was different now. Business reporters, legal analysts, and employment law experts were joining the chat. Comments shifted from emotional reactions to technical analysis. Section 12.4 acceleration clauses are standard in bridge loans. This is textbook material adverse change doctrine. She's playing by corporate rules, not revenge rules. Dr. Martinez leaned forward, her academic mind engaging with the legal theater unfolding. What specific remedies are you seeking? Zara smiled appreciatively. Finally, someone was asking the right questions. Excellent question, Doctor. Let me outline the framework. She pulled out a tablet. Not the cheap device the club provided for orders, but a top-tier business model with documents already loaded. The preparation was staggering. She'd anticipated this moment, perhaps not the exact circumstances, but the need for immediate, comprehensive action. Option 1, Zara began, her presentation skills honed by years of investor meetings. Immediate acceleration of all outstanding loans. Full repayment of $127 million within 72 hours, as stipulated in the Material Adverse Change Clause. The number hit Ashworth like physical blow. He knew his company's cash position. He knew his leverage ratios. 72 hours to produce that much liquid capital would mean bankruptcy, liquidation, thousands of employees losing their jobs. Option 2, Zara continued, voluntary compliance with remediation terms that address both the contractual violation and the underlying systematic issues that created it. Webb found his voice. What kind of remediation? Zara's response was immediate, suggesting months of preparation. Public acknowledgement of discriminatory behavior, broadcast through the same channels that witnessed it. Mandatory enrollment in a comprehensive bias training program, not the standard 2-hour sessions, but 40 hours of intensive education with measurable outcomes. She tapped her tablet, pulling up detailed specifications. Establishment of a $500,000 fund dedicated to service industry worker protection and advocacy. And most importantly, implementation of systematic reforms to prevent future incidents. Henley was frantically scribbling notes, trying to keep up with terms that sounded more like a corporate acquisition than an employment dispute. What kind of reforms? The Thompson Protocol, Zara said, the name rolling off her tongue with practiced ease. Real name accountability for all customer complaints, body camera protection for service staff, anonymous reporting systems with guaranteed investigation, and monthly bias audits conducted by external firms. The specificity was breathtaking. These weren't demands improvised in anger. They were carefully researched solutions to systematic problems, refined through years of observation and analysis. Ashworth tried to regain control. You can't force industry-wide changes through personal loan agreements. I'm not forcing anything industry-wide, Zara corrected. I'm requiring specific performance from specific borrowers. What other businesses choose to do afterward is market dynamics. Dr. Martinez was taking detailed notes, recognizing she was witnessing the birth of a new framework for corporate accountability. The leverage ratio here is remarkable. Personal behavior triggering systematic institutional change through existing contractual mechanisms. 9:23 p.m. Victoria's camera captured the moment perfectly. Ashworth surrounded by papers that represented his company's future. Zara standing calmly with the quiet authority of someone who controlled that future, and 40 witnesses who were beginning to understand they were watching corporate governance evolve in real time. This is madness, Ashworth said desperately. No court would uphold personal conduct clauses in commercial lending. Section 12.4 isn't about personal conduct, Zara replied, pulling out the specific loan document. It's about material reputation damage to lender through borrower actions. Tonight's broadcast, currently viewed by 74,000 people and shared across every major platform, directly damages Thompson Vest's reputation through association with discriminatory practices. She was right, and everyone in the room knew it. Corporate reputation clauses were standard in high-value lending. The innovation was in enforcement, using viral social media as evidence of material reputation damage. Harrison Webb stepped forward, understanding that his club was caught in the crossfire. What about the Meridian Club? What changes are you requiring here? Zara's response revealed the depth of her preparation. Immediate implementation of the Thompson Protocol across all service operations. Establishment of a worker protection fund equal to 10% of annual membership fees. Creation of a promotion pathway program connecting service positions to management roles. The financial implications were staggering but manageable for a club that charged members $200,000 annually. The operational changes, however, would revolutionize how the Meridian Club, and potentially the entire hospitality industry, treated its workforce. Furthermore, Zara continued, full college tuition coverage for all employees' children, legal defense fund for workers facing discrimination, and most importantly, elevation of this incident into a teaching case for hospitality management programs nationwide. Victoria's live stream comments exploded with approval. Policy Queen. This is how you change systems. From humiliation to legislation. Business news networks were already preparing special reports. The Harvard Business Review had editors working on Sunday to analyze the case. What had started as a viral video of workplace discrimination was becoming a masterclass in leveraged institutional change. 9:26 p.m. Ashworth looked around the room desperately, seeking allies, but found only witnesses to his humiliation and participants in his education. The other guests were no longer uncomfortable. They were fascinated, watching someone use corporate tools to address social problems with surgical precision. "I need time to consider," Ashworth said weakly. "The loan agreement specifies 72 hours for material adverse change responses," Zara replied. "But the reputational damage continues every minute this footage circulates. Delay increases both financial and social costs exponentially." She wasn't bluffing. Every hour this story spread made option 1 more expensive and option 2 more necessary. The viral nature of the exposure created a ticking clock that favored immediate resolution over legal maneuvering. Webb made the calculation first. "The Meridian Club accepts all proposed reforms effective immediately. We'll implement the Thompson Protocol as our new operating standard and establish the required funds within 30 days. His quick acceptance made Ashworth's position even more precarious. If the club could adapt, his resistance looked increasingly unreasonable and expensive. Dr. Martinez raised her hand slightly, as if in a classroom. "From a legal perspective, this creates fascinating precedent. Personal behavior triggering systematic institutional change through existing contractual mechanisms, amplified by social media documentation." "That's exactly right," Zara agreed. "We're not breaking rules, we're using existing rules more creatively and completely than most people realize is possible." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. This wasn't just about one discriminatory incident or one violated loan agreement. It was about how power actually worked in modern society, how information and preparation could overcome traditional hierarchies, and how social media could amplify individual accountability into systematic change. Ashworth looked at the papers spread across the table, then at the cameras documenting his decision, then at the woman who had just demonstrated that true power came not from position or wealth, but from understanding systems well enough to change them. "Option 2, he said quietly. "I accept option 2. The corporate showdown was over. The real revolution was just beginning. 9:28 p.m. The transformation began immediately. Within minutes of Ashworth's acceptance, Victoria's live stream became something unprecedented, a real-time documentary of systematic change happening at corporate speed. Henley was already on his phone with the club's operations team, implementing the Thompson Protocol before the evening ended. "I need body cameras for every service staff member by tomorrow morning," he said into his device. "And get legal on the line about the anonymous reporting system." The speed was breathtaking. What typically took months of committee meetings and legal reviews was happening in real time, driven by viral accountability and contractual enforcement. Ashworth sat at the table, no longer the dominant figure, but not quite defeated either. The public apology would be broadcast to Victoria's 78,000 viewers, plus the millions who would see it replayed across news networks. His voice was steady but subdued. "I want to acknowledge that my behavior tonight was unacceptable and discriminatory. I spoke and acted from a position of privilege and prejudice that has no place in any professional environment." He paused, looking directly at Zara. "Ms. Thompson, I apologize for my assumptions, my language, and my actions. You've demonstrated grace and professionalism that I failed to show." The apology felt genuine, perhaps because the alternative, financial ruin, made sincerity a survival strategy. But Zara nodded acceptance, understanding that authentic change mattered more than perfect motivation. The 40-hour bias training program begins Monday, she announced to the room and the live stream audience. Conducted by the same firm that trains federal judges and Fortune 500 executives. This isn't punishment. It's education that should have happened decades ago. Dr. Martinez was documenting everything, recognizing she was watching the birth of new corporate accountability standards. The precedent here is remarkable, using market mechanisms to enforce social change at unprecedented speed. 9:31 p.m. Webb stepped forward with a printed document, the Meridian Club's new operational charter, drafted by legal staff who'd been working frantically behind the scenes. Effective immediately, all club policies include zero-tolerance anti-discrimination provisions with automatic membership termination for violations. The other club members were reading the terms on their phones, shared through the club's member portal in real time. The changes were comprehensive. Mandatory bias training for all members, anonymous complaint systems with guaranteed investigation, and perhaps most significantly, elevation of staff concerns to board-level priority. The $500,000 Service Worker Protection Fund will be established through a special assessment on membership fees, Webb continued. The money will provide legal defense, education scholarships, and emergency assistance for hospitality workers facing discrimination industry-wide. Victoria's comment section exploded with approval and analysis from viewers who understood they were watching labor rights history being written. This is how you change an industry. From one incident to nationwide policy reform, the ripple effects will be massive. Within hours, competing clubs across the city were already reviewing their own policies, understanding that the Thompson Protocol would become the new industry standard. No exclusive establishment wanted to be the next target of viral accountability. 9:34 p.m. The kitchen staff emerged from behind the service window, no longer observers, but participants in their own workplace transformation. Zara addressed them directly, removing any hierarchy between CEO and hourly worker. Each of you will receive a $2,000 bonus for your professionalism tonight, she announced. But more importantly, you'll have protection systems that didn't exist this morning. Body cameras, anonymous reporting, promotion pathways, and legal defense if you ever face discrimination. The emotional impact was immediate. Several staff members were crying, not from sadness but from relief at working in an environment that finally valued their dignity as much as their service. Head chef Maria Santos stepped forward, speaking for her team. Ms. Thompson, we've watched you work here for 2 years. You always treated us as equals, even when everyone thought you were just another server. This feels like justice. 9:36 p.m. The broader implications were already spreading beyond the Meridian Club. Victoria's live stream had been shared by major news networks, employment law firms, and civil rights organizations. #Thompson Protocol was trending globally as other industries began examining how these accountability mechanisms could be adapted. Ashworth's bias training enrollment was confirmed publicly, with progress reports scheduled for weekly broadcast. The transparency was unprecedented, corporate accountability happening in real time, with millions of witnesses ensuring follow-through. This is bigger than tonight, Zara said, addressing both the room and the global audience. This is about creating systems where power serves justice instead of just serving itself. The $2,000 staff bonuses were already being processed through payroll. The college tuition program would launch within 30 days. The legal defense fund would be operational within a week. Speed had become a weapon for change, preventing the institutional delays that typically killed reform initiatives. By 9:40 p.m., what had started as a humiliating incident had transformed into comprehensive policy reform, viral accountability, and a new model for using corporate leverage to create social change. The resolution wasn't just personal, it was systematic, scalable, and completely documented for future reference. The touching stories of discrimination that usually ended in frustration and powerlessness had become a blueprint for transformation that other workers, other industries, and other advocates could study and replicate. The revolution was no longer theoretical. It was operational, funded, and spreading. 3 months later, the Meridian Club had become something unprecedented, a symbol of what was possible when accountability met action. The Thompson Protocol had spread to over 200 hospitality businesses across North America, creating the most comprehensive worker protection network the industry had ever seen. Zara still worked weekend shifts, but now as a statement rather than necessity. Her mother's medical bills were handled through stress-free insurance coverage, allowing her to focus on recovery instead of financial survival. The scholarship program had already helped 180 service workers transition to professional careers, with success stories featured weekly on national news. Victoria's original live stream had been viewed 15.7 million times across all platforms. The Harvard Business Review published a case study titled Viral Accountability: How Social Media Transformed Corporate Governance in Real Time. Law schools were teaching the Thompson Protocol as required curriculum in employment law courses, but the most powerful change was cultural. Ashworth completed his bias training program publicly, with weekly updates that documented genuine transformation rather than performative compliance. His company had implemented comprehensive diversity initiatives that became industry standard. The man who had casually humiliated a waitress now spoke at conferences about the hidden costs of prejudice in business. "The most expensive lesson I ever learned," he said in a TEDx talk that garnered 2.8 million views, "came from someone I thought couldn't teach me anything. Power isn't about who serves whom. It's about who understands the systems well enough to change them." Dr. Martinez published a groundbreaking paper on leveraged social justice that established theoretical framework for using corporate mechanisms to create systematic change. Universities across 3 countries now offered courses specifically analyzing the Meridian Club incident as a template for peaceful revolution. The Service Worker Protection Act passed Congress with bipartisan support, requiring discrimination reporting systems for businesses over 50 employees. The legislative impact had grown from one viral video into nationwide policy reform that protected millions of workers. Zara's philosophy had become a movement. True power isn't about revenge, it's about reshaping systems so the next person won't need revenge. The deeper message resonated across industries. Workers in retail, food service, healthcare, and education began documenting discriminatory incidents with new understanding that viral accountability could create lasting change. The hashtag #HadDignityClapback represented not just individual responses to discrimination, but systematic approaches to institutional transformation. These weren't just touching stories anymore. They were blueprints for change that anyone could study, adapt, and implement. Have you witnessed workplace discrimination that needs addressing? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience could be the catalyst for change in your industry. What would you have done in Zara's position? Tell us your thoughts and strategies for turning powerless moments into powerful change. If you believe dignity belongs to everyone regardless of their job title, share this video with someone who needs to see this message of hope. Subscribe for more real-life stories of quiet, power-changing, loud systems. Because sometimes the most important revolutions happen not through violence or wealth, but through preparation, information, and the courage to use existing systems more completely than most people realize is possible. Remember, your current situation is not your final destination. The most powerful people are often the ones serving others, quietly building the strength to transform everything.